Hey guys, today we're going to start taking a look at graphing points. Before we actually get into graphing points, let's kind of refresh ourselves on the parts of a graph. So first of all, a coordinate plane or a graph is made up of two number lines that cross each other. So first, this line or number line that goes side to side is called the x-axis. So side to side, or you'll hear it called a horizontal line, is called the x-axis. Then the second number line goes vertically or up and down. That is called the y-axis. So when those two cross each other, they cross at this point, and you see the O there? They cross at what's called the origin. And we call it the origin because that's where we always start. That's our original point when we start reading points. So the next thing I want to refresh you on or remind you of is once these two number lines cross, they form what are called quadrants. Quad means four, so it forms four little sections of the graph, and those have Roman numerals. So this section is the first quadrant. This section is the second. This section is the third quadrant. And this last one is called the fourth quadrant. So one more time, our four quadrants are 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now that we've looked at the parts of a graph, let's talk about how you may encounter this or the type of questions you might hear. So let's look at this. One of the type of questions you may hear is, which quadrant are these points in? So let's just practice that. If you are asked that, the very first thing that I would do is I would remind myself this is the first quadrant, the second quadrant, the third quadrant, and the fourth quadrant. So they may ask something like this: which point or which quadrant is point I in? Well, that's in the first quadrant. Which quadrant is point D in? Well, 1, 2, 3, that's in the fourth quadrant. What about C? That's in the third quadrant. A is in the second quadrant. So if you're asked which quadrant a point is in, remember, you start at the first one we learned when we were in elementary school. That's our first quadrant, and then you move to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. But then I want you to take a look at point H. What do you notice about that point? If it asks you if that's in a quadrant, it's not. It's actually on the x-axis. So again, you may have to identify the quadrant that your points are in. Now let's actually take a look at how to read points or graph points. So as a reminder, I want to remind you that when we're reading or writing points, it's always in this form. The first number that you read will be your x value or your position on the x-axis, and the second number will be your position on the y-axis. And I also like to remind you of this. When you're reading a point, first you go left or right from the origin. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. And then second, you go up or down to get to the point or the location. So let's take a look at that, how this would actually look. So sometimes you'll be given the point and you'll be asked to read or tell the coordinates. So let's look at a few of these. So let's read point A, or the coordinates for point A. So first I want to find where A is. Remember, I always start at the origin. That's my starting point. And something I want to remind you of before we actually start doing this. On the x-axis, if you go left, those numbers are negative. But if you go right, those numbers are positive. And then on the y-axis, if you go up, those are positive. And if you go down, that's negative. So now let's read point A. So for point A, I start at the origin. I go left 1, 2, 3. See how I'm under the A? So my first number left 3. And now I notice that I go up 1, 2, 3, 4 jumps. So my second number up is positive 4. So the coordinates of point A are -3, 4. So let's read a few more of these points. Take a look at point B. So first I want to identify where point B is. I notice it's in the first quadrant. So I'm going to start at the origin and I go right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So to the right 5 is going to be a +5 for my first number. And then I go up, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. So my second number is +4. So the coordinates of point B are 5, 4. Let's find the coordinates for point C. So first I find where C is. It's down here in the third quadrant. I always start at the origin. So first I go left or right. In this case I'm going to go left 1, 2. So my first number is left 2 is -2. And then I notice I go down 1, 2 jumps, and down 2 means -2. So the coordinates for point C are -2, -2. And then also let's find the coordinates for point D. So you always start at your origin. Here's my point D. I go right 2 jumps, 1, 2, that's a +2. And then I go down 1, 2. And down 2 is a -2, because remember on the Y, you go down, that's negative. So now let's look at something else that you may encounter. So you also may encounter being given the coordinates and asked to find what's at that location. So let's practice some of those. So I'm going to give you the point -4, 1, and I'm going to ask you what's at -4, 1. So again, we start at the origin. -4, remember our first number is left or right. So -4 is left 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. +1 is up 1. And once I follow those directions, because that's all points are directions, I find that point G is at -4, 1. So again, start at the origin. First you'll go left or right, then you'll go up or down. So let's try another one. So let's say I want you to find what is at 2, 0. Start at the origin. First number is 2, so that means I go to the right 2. My second number is 0, so that means I don't go up or down any. And when I stop, I notice that point H is at 2, 0. Let's try a couple more of these. So let's say I give you 4, 2. So I start at the origin. My first number is +4. So X is +1, 2, 3, 4. And then my second number is +2. That means I go up 2, 1, 2. And when I stop, I notice I'm at point I. And let's try one more. Let's see what is at -5, -4. Remember, we always start at the origin. -5 means I go left 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. -4 means I go down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And once I stop, I notice that F is in that position. So I want you in this lesson to remember your quadrants. Remember how to identify those. Remember, you always start at the origin. Your first number is your X value, left or right. The second number in your point is your Y value, either up or down.